Overwatch started and released in 2016. It was first announced in 2014 at a BlizzCon or EA, just showing off this new game that was coming out. And when it released in 2016, it had a big boom. It was a major success, because the only other game that was similar to it was Team Fortress 2 at the time. Regardless, Overwatch released in its heyday with 14 characters, which seems small now compared to its new roster that it has, especially with the most recent update. This game, when it first released, it was amazing. It started off with 6v6 and it only had these rosters listed here. And when I mean this game was a success, I mean at the beta for 2015, it had like around 10 million players beta testing it prior to even its release. And that's how we knew when 2016 it was going to release in a major success. And the first year that it released, it grew and drew in over $1 billion in revenue from the game alone, which also over 3 years, it had around 50 million players playing already. So that's already great. And it was great. Everything was going well. Even Blizzard funded the esports for Overwatch to then have more competitive action and bring this game more into light. The game was even nominated Game of the Year and was considered one of the greatest games of all time. Pretty insane. But obviously over time, some things have to fall, right? Great things have to fail, and it did. And then it got shut down. But don't worry, we got the release of Overwatch 2 with greater promises and greater things coming to the second one, except it wasn't a separate game. It was just another soft launch and reboot of the first game. There's controversies on that by itself. And you might be wondering the same thing that I was, especially at the time. Why make an Overwatch 2 if it's basically the same game? That's another thing I want to cover right now. Overwatch 1 was great and was amazing, and people loved it. The main issue with that is, for some reason, the devs decided not to add any new characters, add any new updates or maps, or really kind of update the game in general. Maybe they gave it a few nerfs and buffs, but nothing really changed. And as you can see here, Echo was announced in March 2020 and then released a month later. But for Sojourn, she was announced in November 2019 when Overwatch 2 was announced, but wasn't released until 2 years later in 2022 when Overwatch 2 beta was released. And that basically gives a scale of almost 2 to 3 years of nothing. Not even an update for Overwatch 1. This was just an announcement for the second one coming out. It didn't change anything. So instead of making it a big update or a big patch, they decided, okay, since we've droughted you guys for a long time, we're gonna revamp this whole game. So whenever they revamped the game because they starved Overwatch 1 of all of their content, they basically, instead of making a new update, they're like, okay, we're gonna make Overwatch 2 a free-to-play game instead of paying $40, which is part of the reason they switched over to another game. When this happened, they canceled Overwatch 1. So the first Overwatch was no longer a game. It was more so just like closed out. You couldn't play it. You could only play Overwatch 2. A big change that they did when Overwatch 2 came out is instead of 6v6, which everyone was used to and everyone loved, they decided to make it 5v5, which is an issue because the game was built around the 6v6 process, right? So this change itself was even more of another controversy within itself, especially for someone like me who played tank. I was the main tank player, and in Overwatch 2 there was only one tank player instead of two. They said they were going to add more PvE, like player versus everyone gameplay, which wasn't in the first one and was promised in the first one, but wasn't given, right? And this was done in the second game, but then it was hidden behind a paywall, which was not great at all. I mean, who would want to pay for a story mode that's basically lackluster and only had around 1 to 5 missions, which was just essentially playing these easy mode bots? It wasn't anything crazy. It was just like a separate horde mode for this game. And another big thing, finally the third or fourth big thing for Overwatch 2 is they added a battle pass and they removed loot boxes. Loot boxes itself had controversies. That whole situation was there, which is another thing why the rebrand was pushed. But to be honest, a lot of people really loved these loot boxes. It wasn't essentially gambling, but instead of making skins purchasable and others loot boxes separate, they decided remove loot boxes and you can only buy skins. And this was even more of a problem because more of the legendary skins that you wanted were more expensive each time. That was Overwatch 2. That's basically what it was. They finally added a few new characters, except at the beginning of Overwatch 2, they decided, you know what, you could either buy the character separately or you could buy the battle pass to get the character. but the character itself is not free. And I believe it was free maybe like months down the line, and even then if that was the case. But that was another controversy that Overwatch had. And one of my main issues with this game is it had no competitors at the time, so it could do whatever it wanted, just like this. I forgot to mention in Overwatch 1 there was an open queue at the beginning and anybody could choose who they want. Transitioning over from 1 to 2, there was a strict role queue that was placed where you could only play one role. Some people love this, some people don't, but other players want whatever, right? It just depends. And this kind of moves me over to why the third rebrand came out, and essentially why the game is actually good now and fixed. And that was because around 2024, finally, after 8 years of playing with this game, rebranded once, and not even including the lore that we didn't talk about and how it was basically ignored and how the PvE that was promised for 1 and 2 failed miserably. We now finally have a redemption arc, which was surprisingly the release of a game called Marvel Rivals. Ooh shit, ooh shit. Marvel Rivals released sometime between 2024 when Overwatch 2 was still Overwatch 2, and this gave fans finally a great competitor to switch over from Overwatch to basically have fun again and actually have something new and fresh that was in, you know, the game category, which was a hero shooter, at least one that's very similar to Overwatch, except this one was a little different. It had characters you loved that you already knew, Marvel characters. It had 6v6, great, amazing. It was third person, so it wouldn't be always too overwhelming, and the animations and character designs were amazing. It was not exactly the same as Overwatch, but it was a new and improved look that everyone was waiting for. This game, when it released, it essentially moved over a lot of people that were disgruntled and upset with Overwatch to move over and to finally play a new game with new characters to explore, despite them being very similar, and the jokes being there that, you know, there is basically a clone of this in here. Besides that, the game still had a lot of unique moves, setups, character abilities, team ups. They had ranked, they had open queue. It included characters every season, new characters every single season, which then included new metas every single season, new ability changes every single season, new team ups changed every single season, buffs, nerfs every single season, no matter what, right? Nothing stayed the same. It was always moving, always improving. You know, you always needed to be kept up with this. But yes, with Marvel Rivals, it was a great success. It's still a great game to this day, and it is a big competitor for Overwatch because it made them lose a lot of money, and they were not happy about this, right? End of 2025, start of 2026, finally, after Blizzard decided to realize that there was so much money being lost to their competitor, Marvel Rivals, they decided to do another reboot, which was the third Overwatch reboot, which then reverted back to Overwatch 1.
So moving forward, we're dropping the 2 and continuing simply
Overwatch, registered, whatever. And I'll be explaining that in a minute. Yeah, one of the major things is Marvel did listen to the community. Sir Guanyan Chen actually listened to us. Aaron Keller didn't want to listen to us. Jeff Kaplan listened to us. Aaron Keller did not give a fuck about the community and almost even killed the game. But shout out Guanyan Chen for listening to us, because that created a domino effect for consumerism of ourselves that we love. And now this battle continues, right? Overwatch 1 rebrand, right? Finally, a new and improved Overwatch, right? 5 new characters. These 5 new characters is going to be a cat, a fire lady that looks exactly like the other ones, some Asian dude with a hat that looks like he's from Mortal Kombat, some Indian lady with arms and a shield, which is, she's one of the top players right now, and oh yeah, some guy that looks like Raiden and kind of like Genji a little bit, but with a different face, and he's another hit scan. Oh my god. We're gonna include 5 new characters in this new upcoming rebrand. This time for sure, guys, we're actually going to fix the game, add more maps to the game, and add more updates, and then revamp some of our old characters and come out with new collaborations and things like that. So finally, when Overwatch 3, or just Overwatch, was now released, they showed us that they could actually release characters a lot faster than what they gave us before. So with this competition, it essentially sparked this great rivalry that allowed us to enjoy both games at the same time, and it showed us that they could actually give us characters instead of just waiting almost 4 or 5 seasons for a new character, which they did in Overwatch 2. Why did they do that? Why did they do? They didn't even need to do that, but yeah, thank you, Marvel Rivals. Thank you, Guan Shan Chen, for this rivalry, because all in all, the only people that benefit from this fight is essentially us, the players. And now returning back to Overwatch since 2016, since I'm an original player who bought the game, it feels great. It feels amazing. It feels just like the original one did and what it was. Especially with all this new revamping that it did, it finally feels like a great game again. And Marvel Rivals is still amazing itself. I would suggest playing both of them, whichever you like. And yeah, so now we know why Overwatch was rebranded and why it changed to 3 different names over the years. But one of the best things we learned from this outcome is the devs could help us out. They could make the game better, and they could essentially give us what we want if they wanted to. So don't settle for less next time we play any game, because any game could be fixed if the dev cares enough, or if you give them enough money. It doesn't matter, or if they lose enough money. So let that be the lesson for today. And thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you want to talk, what we want to talk about next. There is a couple things I could talk about, which is more so like Overwatch and Marvel Rivals competition, more into depth. There is the Overwatch lore, but right now I was just kind of breaking down why the Overwatch was rebranded 3 times and why it's back to its original place and where it wanted to be. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Goodbye.